Well, namaskar everyone. Happy to see you all again. Well, today, as we had planned, after giving an overview of the soul, of birth and death, obviously, today's talk would be on the mystery of rebirth. In the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8, verse 14, 15 and 16. Verse 14, chapter 8, it reads like this: He who continually remembers me, thinking of none else, the yogin, O Partha, who is in constant union with me, finds me easy to attain. Verse 15, having come to me, these great souls come not again to birth, this transient and painful condition of our mortal being. They reach the highest perfection. Verse 16, the highest heavens of the cosmic plan are subject to a return to rebirth. O Kaunteya, there is no rebirth imposed on the soul that comes to me. So here we have first introduction of the concept of rebirth. But these three verses give us the essence of the concept. What is it? That this world is indeed a transient and painful. But those who continually remember the Lord and those who are in constant union with the Lord, they need not come back to birth. Otherwise, those who are not in constant contact with Him, well, they have to return time and again into this transient and painful condition. So there is a condition, very clear. As was given in the Vedas and the Upanishads, there is a question of rebirth. So there is a rebirth for those souls which are tied up here, which are not really continuously in contact with the divine. So this is the gist of the idea, the seed idea, that as long as we are a part of this evolution and we have not connected the divine, not only the divine within the psychic being, but also the Supreme Lord, the Purushottama, we are bound to come back to this earth, we may like it or not. So this is a wonderful, these three verses give you the gist idea. But as we have been seeing, behind these seed ideas, there is a very long explanation that can be given. And again, it is thanks to Sri Aurobindo and the Mother that we get a very beautiful explanation of these concepts. The first thing that Sri Aurobindo takes up is why the need and necessity of rebirth. Because one is the statement by Lord Krishna that we have to come back. Fine, that is taken for granted. But the question is, Why is it required, this rebirth? Is it required at all? Why? Well, here is a very novel, a new idea that is introduced in the Life Divine. He says this terrestrial evolutionary working of nature, from matter to mind and beyond it, has a double process. That is, there is a double evolution upon this earth. So this kind of a double evolution, this concept is brought out for the first time by Sri Aurobindo. So what is this double evolution? There is an outward visible process of physical evolution with birth as its machinery. For each evolved form of body housing its own evolved power of consciousness is maintained and kept in continuity by heredity. So one is the outward visible process of physical evolution. This is the process of birth. By this physical evolution, what we are getting is the process is through heredity, basically, not everything. So there is from generation to generation, from eon to eon, from century to century, all outward forms of the human being, they are contributing to this outer visible evolution in nature. The second level, there is at the same time an invisible process of soul evolution with rebirth into ascending grades of form and consciousness as its machinery. There's a very beautiful distinction here. The outward evolution takes place by birth, and the inner evolution, the spiritual evolution, takes place by rebirth. So straight away we get the answer, why rebirth? So these are the two processes that are happening simultaneously upon earth. The first by itself would mean only a cosmic evolution. The first means the outer. The outer visible process of physical evolution is called cosmic evolution. For the individual would be a quickly perishing instrument, and the race, a more abiding collective formulation, would be the real step in the progressive manifestation of the cosmic inhabitant. Try to understand this. So on the outer level there is a cosmic evolution. Cosmic evolution in the sense of collective evolution. So again is a very good clarification here. The outer evolution is collective evolution, and the inner evolution, the one of the spiritual evolution, is the individual. So you see how Sri Aurobindo takes care of both the evolution, the inner and the outer, the individual and the collective. So these are the parallel lines that are going on this earth. But parallel lines, it doesn't mean that they are equal, they are not running hand to hand. Maybe the individual evolution is far behind, the collective evolution is far further. It may be the other way around. But these are the two lines of evolution. So let us not think that there's an evolution only we are going from, from those dark ages, from those ages of bullock carts, and we have become great evolution, we have, computers and all that. Well, that is there on the outer evolution, and it says each grade of cosmic manifestation, each type of form that can house the indwelling spirit, is turned by rebirth into a means of the individual soul, the psychic entity, to manifest more and more of its concealed consciousness. So now we can really understand how things are happening upon this earth. Individually, there is a spiritual evolution, a continuous spiritual evolution. And this spiritual evolution, the stalwarts are the spiritual beings. Those spiritual beings, you see, who have got a bit of this expression of this cosmic consciousness. It's not that every individual is contributing to this, and yet, this is again very important, each individual is progressing spiritually. Because we are there, we have a spiritual element within us, the psychic element. Therefore, whatever is our progress, good or bad, high or low, there is a continuity of spiritual evolution. And then whatever we are doing, we say we are doing for the society, for my community, for my family, for your nation, whatever is your work, each one is contributing something or the other to the collective evolution, to the collective progress. So, especially the present times, this collective evolution has become very rapid. It's no more in my family as it used to happen 100 years back or 200 years back. The progress is to be amongst my community, my village, my little state. It's not even to the level of nation now. The collective evolution has become cosmic, global. So whatever you do in one corner of the earth, be it in Vietnam or be it USA or be it Europe or be it Ceylon, it is a global thing that is happening. So this collectivity has become so wide now, we cannot escape it. So that is why we can see that this evolution by birth has become very rapid, very wide. That's why each one of us is really influenced by what happens in one corner of the earth. But it is there on the spiritual level. We have to see, are we connecting with each other? I think we are lagging a lot on the individual spiritual levels. At least individually, there are great men, great acharyas, great saints, great visionaries, great sadhus, sadhaks who are coming up. And they are contributing to the spiritual evolution, and that's why Sri Aurobindo can speak of the evolution of consciousness and ending up in a spiritual age. Because he does say that we are progressing, and this progress will ultimately take us to a kind of a spiritual age. And now, secondly, he reiterates this point from a different angle. The human birth in this world is on its spiritual side a complex of two elements. The same idea he puts it in differently. A spiritual person and a soul of personality. The former is man's eternal being, the latter is his cosmic and mutable being. Very beautifully. One is a spiritual person, P capital, and the other is a soul personality, is what we are, the outer personality. As a spiritually impersonal person, he is one in his nature and being with the freedom of Satchidananda. That means within, inwardly, the psychic being or the soul is one with the Supreme Lord, Paramatma or Satchidananda, whatever we call. And that is the impersonal aspect. And then he calls it the soul of personality. He is himself part of that long development of the soul experience of the forms of nature. It is a universal evolution. But the same idea reiterated in a different way, that the inner person he calls it a spiritual person, the outer person he calls it a soul of personality. But this is the same idea. One is on the universal level, the inner is one with the transcendent. But this is the reason why we have here the question of this question of why we have this evolution. You see, why there is even rebirth. Because this is something that people have really asked the question why, but it is true that it is a necessity. It is not just our choice of having rebirth or not. Now, this question of the spiritual evolution is something innate. It is true that the spiritual urge has been largely otherworldly or turned at its extreme towards a spiritual negation and self-annihilation of the mental ideal. You see, when we speak about the spiritual ideal, the inner growth, the inner evolution, there have been two tendencies in India, especially in India. I can talk about India more. One is this expression has been largely otherworldly or turned at its extreme towards a spiritual negation and self-annihilation. That means we have been given, unfortunately, for the past 1,000 and 1,200 years, a negative spiritual philosophy which has been otherworldly. And that point we'll take up again, that when we say this question of the rebirth, we'll come to it. But there have been two stages of the spiritual aspiration, the inner spiritual aspiration of man. One stage, although originally in the Vedas and the Upanishads and the Gita, there has been an integral vision of things. That means having to have this integrality of life to be lived out fully. But midway, after about the 9th century or so, slowly there has been a negative aspect. That means we started looking into the otherworldliness, that means how to go back, how to return and be away from this world. This has been the negative thing. But after that, especially in the present times and in the yonder times of Vedas and the Upanishads, there has been other type of spirituality also. What we say, the dynamic side of the spiritual urge. So there has been a passive spirituality and there is a dynamic spirituality. You'll see how we relate all this together. This dynamic spirituality, which has been there lying a little low, but it's only in the present time that it's coming forth again. What is it? It is for a spiritual perfection of the being. But the other one, this passive one, was an escape. But here we are looking for a spiritual perfection of the being, a divinization of the mind, the heart and the very body. If you want to now call it, this is the essence of spirituality in Sri Aurobindo's view. His view is that of dynamic spirituality, where he is seeking for a perfection, what he would call as the self-perfection or the integral perfection. So this perfection of mind, body and vital or the emotions. There has been even the dream or a psychic prevision of a fulfillment exceeding the individual transformation, a new earth and heaven, a city of God, a divine descent upon earth. You see how the things are really fulfilling themselves. Sri Aurobindo has given us this vision, and prior to that Lord Krishna had given thousands of years back. But that vision of Lord Krishna is coming back now. In between there has been a big vacuum where this ideal was lost. So the bringing back of this dynamic spirituality is what is very important, because it is in this ideal of the dynamic spirituality is what is convenient to the present times. You see, we do not want to leave the world, we do not want to reject the earth, we do not want to be ascetics. And yet, if you want to go on the path of spirituality, what should we do? It should be something dynamic, where we embrace mind, life and body. Not only that, Sri Aurobindo is telling us that even we dream of a psychic prevision of a city of God, a divine descent upon earth, a reign of the spiritually perfect, a kingdom of God. Well, these ideals were given long back, the kingdom of God, city of God, etc. But nothing was done about that because there was a negative spirituality. But now with a positive spiritual vision that Sri Aurobindo has given us, we see a direct manifestation of this dynamic spirituality in the city of God that we have named it today as Aurobindo. So it's not just a vision, it is trying to become a reality. So we see Sri Aurobindo's vision of a direct spirituality is in the making. It's not yet complete, we have a lot to do, but it's still in the making. And therefore we see the second point of this being fulfilled, and then we come to the argument where Sri Aurobindo tells us that the question he himself says is, but why a succession of human births and not one? That's a question that people have asked him, or not him directly, but it has been there. Why should there be? Because there are some religions who do not believe in this rebirth. They say it's only one birth. And then the question is, why should we come again and again? We have come once upon earth, we have done our work, our duty, we have contributed to the expansion of the outer consciousness of this earth, of this humanity. But why should I come again? That is the question. For the same reason that has made human birth itself a culminating point of the past succession, the previous upward series, it must be so by the very necessity of the spiritual evolution. For the soul has not finished what it has to do by merely developing into humanity. It has still to develop that humanity into its higher possibilities. Try to understand this logic, very beautiful. It says the very fact that humanity is born, maybe thousands of years back, that's fine. But how were we born? How did we come upon earth? You see, there was the stage of matter, life and animals and all that. But because it's the spirit, it's the soul, which has been taking innumerable births, that after thousands and thousands of births, it has come to a stage of man, where at the level of man it has become the psychic being. Fine, we said that. So now Sri Aurobindo is telling us that now that we have come to the level of humanity, and humanity itself in thousands of years has grown, has developed, has evolved, both inwardly and outwardly, is this the end of the growth of the soul, or the steps that have been taken by the soul? It cannot be. Because we think very high of our own personnel. Sri Aurobindo is giving the example that in those very primitive stages where people were all the time fighting and killing each other in the vital level, they're all that level. But do you think humanity of that stage of the Neanderthal that we see, people in the forest, in the caves, can we say that humanity should have stopped there? No. Obviously we wanted humanity to progress. And the soul taking rebirth again and again, so that it has come to the level of the great civilization today. And people think, oh, there's a great philosopher like Socrates and Plato and India. We have great people, great rishis like Shankaracharya, Ramanujacharya. These are all high spiritual beings who have been called even avatars. In the recent times, we have great Swamiji and great Sri Ramakrishna, etc. But are these people the end of human growth? That's the question. You see, it cannot be so. Although they were the highest spiritual beings we can envisage, like Sri Ramakrishna and Sri Shankaracharya and Ramanujacharya, all of them, still Sri Aurobindo says that is not the ultimate. We have had great rishis and great yogis. We have a huge long list of that. But Sri Aurobindo argues that no amount of greatness of great spiritual leaders can be the ultimate upon this earth. Because these people have been great spiritual pathfinders, only to tell us that there is a beyond. They never said that evolution is going to come to an end with me. They have always given us a vision that there is a Brahman, there is a divinity, there is a superior consciousness, there is Satchidananda. We have to move toward that. Some have called this an illusion, some said it is a possibility of growing further, whatever that philosophy. But they never claimed to be the ultimate of human civilization or the human birth. So there are the spiritual leaders who show us a path to a further evolution. So Sri Aurobindo has a magnificent sentence there. He says, there may be a higher or at least a larger possibility which the divine intends yet to realize in man, and if so, it is the steps built by these highest souls which are needed to compose the way up to it and open the gates. So with all these great people showing us the way, there are still steps on the way to a greater humanity that's going to come in the future. Because here Sri Aurobindo says that the imperfection of man is not the last word of nature, but his perfection too is not the last peak of the spirit. See the sentence. The imperfection of man is not the last word of nature. Let us not think that, man with all his imperfection, how can he be the last? But even his perfected nature also is not the last peak of spirit. So what is it the message? That we are moving towards a greater civilization, towards a greater human race, what Sri Aurobindo calls the new race or the supramental race or the Superman race, whatever. So Sri Aurobindo is of the view that this inner evolution will move towards a greater race beyond man. However great has been our human culture, with all its greatest arts and musicians and artists and painters and sculptors, extraordinarily beautiful culture we have, both in the West and in the East. But then he says no. What the future holds is far superior to whatever we have done in the past. The simple reason? Because the future consciousness itself is going to be far superior than the mental consciousness we have had till now. Imagine the consciousness we had 10,000 years before, where humanity was largely under the vital and the physical consciousness. Today, with the mental consciousness, there is a greater capacity, greater instrumentation, greater possibilities. We have searched the depths of the sea. We have gone to see the heights of the sky, beyond the sky. That's because with our mind. Imagine a consciousness that comes beyond the mind. And that consciousness beyond the mind will definitely have its own instrumentation, will have its own art, its own sculpture, its own this thing, which will be far subtler. Don't think of this future architecture also again made of granite and marble. They will use a material which is much subtler, more vibrant, much more luminous, much more transparent. Even matter itself will be something different. So Sri Aurobindo has always to tell us that we have something that is beyond what we can look for. That is the evolution. And then we see this is the way that there's a question of evolution that takes place, inner and outer. Now to wrap up the argument, that the question of rebirth is important simply because humanity has to go forward. Just as it has come through the ages and reached the level of man today, and then we have to go forward. How will it go forward? What we said, by rebirth we go forward on the inward journey. By birth we go forward on the outer journey. So both these paths will move forward by birth and rebirth, and humanity will take us forward. You see, Mother has a beautiful example here. She says, if there is no question of, if we do not agree about the soul, about the spiritual evolution, a simple answer that Sri Aurobindo and the Mother tell us, that rebirth has no meaning, need not be accepted, can be rejected, if you do not believe in a spiritual evolution of man. That's where the Gita is telling us, the Lord tells us the same thing, that having come to me, these great souls come not to me again by birth. So once we reach a spiritual level, we don't have to come. But until then, it is an absolute necessity that there should be rebirth. Mother gives a simple example. She says, imagine we have some plasticine in our hand, what the children play with. And the plasticine for modeling, you make a form, then you have finished, you don't like it, so you break it up and make it into a paste again and try another form. You have made some progress. You try, you arrange, you say, that didn't work. I'm going to try this. And your form is a little better, but still not what you want. She's giving an example. She says, just like the child plays with plasticine, making one form, making a horse or making an elephant, making a dog or something. Each time the child says, well, it's good, but that's not good enough. He remolds the whole plasticine, brings it back to the original form and makes a new form. And what is the effect of the whole thing? He has only a memory, I made a horse, it was not good, now I'm making an elephant. After the elephant, he'll make something else. Similarly, she says, nature also tries with different things. Of course, nature, it does not go one by one. It does millions of things simultaneously. But the question is that how it goes forward with its experimentation through the process of outer evolution, which is by birth, and through the process of inner evolution, which is by rebirth. So the argument is the same, that we are continuing with this, that whatever is happening outer and inward, there is the question of the need for rebirth. Now in this rebirth, philosophy of rebirth, there have been some other popular ideas, beliefs. There are some popular beliefs held since ancient times which are inconsistent. It is popularly believed, for instance, that the soul takes birth immediately after death. Now these are some of the questions. These are different philosophies that you might have heard. That the soul takes birth immediately after death. This is called the transmigration actually. There is another ancient religious belief of a life after death in heaven or in hell, according to the acts of piety or sin it did, or the merits or demerits acquired by the soul during its previous life. But this is something that is going to lead us to the next point of karma. Because any question of rebirth, what the Lord has told us here about the rebirth, it automatically includes the concept of karma. And I've kept this discussion for karma for tomorrow. But this is there. What is the idea? That is that a life after death in heaven or in hell, according to the acts of piety or sin. So some people believe that soul, the moment it leaves the body, it transmigrates, takes up another body. Then the other philosophies, they know it goes either to hell or heaven, according to the deeds he has done upon earth, it goes and stays there. And then the soul would take birth only after it exhausts the fruits of its merits in heaven, or serves out its sentence of suffering and punishment in hell. This we have heard very common in India. We have seen, we are all believers in karma, and then we say, no, we have to finish our karma here. Then if we do good deeds, we go to heaven. If we did bad deeds, to patala and all that. And once we finish our punishment, we come back. So these are the different theories of rebirth. An immediate rebirth, or rebirth after passing a sentence in hell or heaven. In the ordinary conception of rebirth, the idea of progression is not apparent. But rebirth is a constant reiteration, as it is often popularly believed, but it is a progression. All the progress that is popularly associated with rebirth is the capacity of the soul to exceed the necessity of being born again on this earth. Now these are the different views, very popular, which some of you may believe in, some of you may have heard about it. But what is this question about, is there a heaven or hell? Do we go to this hell and heaven? Is it a possibility? So this is where Sri Aurobindo has given his own views, refuting these views that we have to go to hell or patala or that, and spending our time there with our sentence. What exactly does Sri Aurobindo say about it? Hell and heaven are often imaginary states of the soul, or rather of the vital being, which it constructs about it after its passing. Now, this is a very, very thing. I mean, you can have a lot of discussion and really think about it. He said these are not really places which have been created by the evolutionary processes. Remember, in the evolutionary process, there are different worlds that have been created. Even before evolution began, there was an evolutionary process, worlds were created. Like we said, the overmental world or the intuitive mind, etc. But there is nothing called heaven and hell that has been created. Prior to the creation of man, there is nothing that was created. So they are not these places which have been created by the divine as such. That's what Sri Aurobindo is calling it as, they are often imaginary states of the soul, or rather of the vital being, which it constructs after its passing. What is meant by hell is a painful passage through some vital world, or a dolorous lingering there, as for instance in many cases of suicide, where one remains surrounded by the forces of suffering and turmoil created by the unnatural and violent exit. So ultimately, what do we understand? That the hell is a painful passage through some vital world. Now this we know, we have already discussed, that once the soul leaves its physical body, it passes through different worlds. What we said, the world of the subtle physical, the vital, the mental, etc. Now once it comes to the vital level, they have already described at length, that it gets stuck there. And the vital level is the most the place of greatest suffering. Because there our soul gets stuck because of the desires that we have had, the passion that we have had, the lower nature that we have had, all the things that we really express and follow when we are in the body. We may think that these are all gone, that now that the body is left, it's all over. No. That is the misunderstanding that common human people think, that once the body is gone, I am free of all these desires and suffering and all that. On the contrary, our suffering continues tenfold more, and especially in the case of suicides. We had already discussed before, because of this, the forces of suffering and turmoil created by this unnatural death. So what is hell? Hell is a painful passage through some vital world. It's a passage. It's not that we are going to be there forever, or we are going to be sentenced there for 15,000 years or 10,000 years or 10 years. It's a passage. It depends upon our own vital doing when we are in the body. So definitely it is a suffering, it's painful, it takes time, but the soul goes through that. Because after that there is a mental level. And in the mental level again there is a point of suffering. So all these are called hells. So there is not a particular region that, this is now going to be, gateways to the hell or gateway to heaven. It is a world of the vital and the mental that we have seen. But the mother does mention somewhere that because humanity has been so very persistently creating on the mental level that this is paradise, this is heaven, this is hell, this is patal, this is thing, it's the mind that has kind of created these worlds. It's not an involutionary creation. We have had the mind has had the power to create. So sometimes, actually there's no power to create, but it's nothing but what Sri Aurobindo says, the vital worlds. But that's another name. Because all the things that you give a description of hell or heaven, They're pure vitalistic. Even when we say it's a heaven, nobody thinks of reading a scripture there, where all the vital enjoyment there. So what all we are doing upon earth, we do it 10 times more in heaven, and then what all the suffering we have upon earth, we have it 10 times more in hell. So our imagination is nothing but only exaggeration of our own difficulties, our own suffering that we have upon earth. And we have written novels about that and books about that, included that in scriptures and all that and all that. That is what is really Sri Aurobindo calls the vital world. So there we see, and what about heaven? Well, there's nothing called heaven, as I said, it is the creation of the mind for all its vital enjoyments. But if you want to call something paradise, Mother would say, it is the paradise of the where there's bliss, where there's joy and beauty and delight. It's the paradise of the Ananda Loka. It is on that Loka, it's on that world that we have the paradise. If at all you want to equate, otherwise there's specifically nothing called paradise or nothing called hell. Now we see, when we are speaking about these things, there's one more thing that Sri Aurobindo mentions here. What we have described, actually hell and heaven, belong to the description of internatal worlds. Means, once the soul leaves this body, it doesn't go directly to Ananda Loka. It has to go through the internatal. That means between the highest point, the Ananda Loka, and the earth, there are several worlds which he calls the internatal, between the birth or between the births. So the soul, all the souls directly don't go to the Ananda Loka. As we have said, reiterated many a time, that these souls go into the middle regions, either into the vital world, they stay there for a long time, the subtle physical or the mental world. So they get stuck up there. And then, in fact, some may be there which get stuck in the vital so badly for so long that they return to earth from the vital level itself. Or some may come back from the mental level itself, mental world. Or sometimes it happens that some souls return to birth from the subtle physical level. That soul, those souls are called transmigratory souls. That means, imagine from the physical level, next you go to the subtle physical level. But sometimes the dangers are so much that the soul is not able to go forward. So it returns to take a birth upon earth. And then there's a question of transmigration and immediate birth. And we have this idea that I wanted to tell you is, because there's a question here that these are immediate births. So those souls which come from the level of the subtle physical, because they take an immediate birth, they carry memory of the previous births. And that is why we have had so many cases of children remembering their parents, where they were, their village and their school, and all the details very much. But actually when the soul leaves for the higher worlds, it doesn't remember. Because the soul has returned just from the next world, that is the subtle physical, it still has the memory of these things. So that is one point that we should remember. So the souls are there which can remember all these things. Then those souls which go far off, they don't remember. Now there's another point that I need to clarify. First we have to ask whether the soul, I mean, you see this question here, I think somebody even asked me in my questions, can the soul go back to the animal stage? Take birth as an animal, whatever the animal you want to call. We have given it many names, from the dogs to cats to, whatever the names, goat and sheep. There is a specific answer. Sri Aurobindo says, and first we have to ask whether the soul, having once arrived at humanity, can back to the animal life and body. A retrogression which the old popular theories of transmigration have supposed to be an ordinary movement. Sri Aurobindo's answer: it seems impossible that it should go back with any entirety, and for this reason, that the transit from animal to human life means a decisive conversion of consciousness, quite as decisive as the conversion of the vital consciousness of the plant into the mental consciousness of the animal. You see, he is arguing that that the soul has taken thousands and thousands of births in order to evolve from the stone, from the life, from the animals and all that. And with great difficulty, after great many births, it has come to the level of the human being. So why should that soul come back, a retrogression, a movement backward, go to the animal level? So it's not a fancy to go back to the animal level. It is out of great labor, a great persistence, a great aspiration, I would say, that it has reached the human level. So it cannot go back anti-evolutionary steps. A very clear thing. He said that is against the law of this divine plan, that anything moves against this evolutionary force. But he says, it is impossible that a conversion to decisive made by nature should be reversed by the soul, and the decision of the spirit within her come as it were to naught. Now there's one little possibility he mentions. It could only be possible for human souls, supposing such to exist, in whom the conversion was not decisive, souls they can come back. Now this is an important point. He said there is a possibility that some souls which are just on the border of becoming the human beings. You see, as we said, it takes thousands and thousands of births to come to the level of human beings. But imagine a soul that just on the border of the animals, for example, the next life it would jump into the human level. Such a soul, if it is not yet fully ready to take the leap, there could be some kind of a weakness, some kind of a not yet ready. Such a soul only can come to human life and get back into the animal, because it is in transition between the animal and the human being. But once a soul is settled on the human level, it has taken a couple of human births, it will not go back. So what we understand is only a soul in transition could do that. Well, we have had a beautiful case in the ashram, somebody, who used to trot like a horse. I mean, he was a common friend. We used to be in the same group playing football and games. But whenever he ran, his running was like a trotting. And when asked to the mother what happened, this man trots like that, mother said this is his first human birth. So he has carried over the trotting that means he was previously a horse. So that thing of the trotting of the horse was carried over to this life. Of course, the gentleman also, he did not have the mind developed or the vital developed, nothing. He was more or less, we could see the first human stage. Of course, the mother said that, we didn't know that. But also in one of her dreams, she says, I've seen this man on the animal level. So this is the example of the first, or the possibility of the human and the animal, there could be possibility. Otherwise, there is no such possibility. And yet there is one more possibility. That is the question of a part of the vital being. You see, we have said the soul goes through the levels, goes through the level of the vital. And you see, some desires, some vehement desires are not able to disperse, are not able to come out of that, that circling wall of the soul, psychic being. So what happens is, some of these desires, unfulfilled desires, strong desires, vehement desires, whatever you want to call, they sometimes get into animals and fulfill themselves. Sometimes it's they who come as ghosts. Nothing to do with the soul. The soul has not taken a birth as the animal. But a part of the desire, vital desire, has entered of an animal and fulfills itself. And that fulfilling itself is very good for the psychic being. Then one of those big boulders of the vital level has been removed from its wall, so psychic being can go forward. So these are a couple of things that it can happen. A vital part comes to animal, becomes a ghost, becomes all that. Or, as you said, a soul which is in transition between man and the animal, that can happen. Otherwise, from the evolutionary point of view, there is no going back. And the last point, important to know and very interesting to know, we have said all this question of rebirth. Rebirth, as the Lord Himself tells us, upon this transient and painful condition of our mortal being. Why do we take this? Why do we come back? Knowing fully well that it is a transient and painful earth this is. That's the question. In fact, very, very nicely, somebody asked me, knowing fully well the suffering, why should the soul come to this earth? Well, first of all, the soul comes knowingly that this earth is a place of anityam asukam, a lot of pain and suffering and transitory. But it knows. It's not a mistake by the soul that, oh, I'm sorry, I came to a wrong place. It's not a wrong address. It has come here knowingly. And we have discussed already before that it comes here knowingly to fulfill the purpose of bringing the divinity into matter. That's number one. Secondly, this kind of a transformation of matter can be done only upon earth. That is the most magnificent thing you should understand. The only place where there is a direct contact between the divine and matter is earth. In fact, I read out something from the Mother and a beautiful description. The earth is the center of the material universe. It has been created for concentrating the force that is to transform matter. It is a symbol of the divine potentiality in matter. As we have said, the earth was created through a direct intervention of the divine consciousness. It is on the earth alone that there is and can be the direct contact with the divine. The earth absorbs and develops and radiates the divine light. Its radiation spreads through space and extends wherever there is matter. Imagine its importance. The material universe shares to some extent the gift that the earth brings, the light and harmony of the divine consciousness. But it is upon the earth alone that there is a full and final flowering of that consciousness. The psychic being is found on the earth alone, for it is a product of the earth. It is the touch of the divine upon matter. The psychic being is a child of the earth. It is born and grows upon earth. It is native to nowhere else. Still, when it develops sufficiently and becomes an adult individuality, it can go to the other physical domains, visit other planets, etc. So now we see the importance of the earth. It is not just a place of suffering and pain, but it has been created directly by the divine intervention of grace and love. So here, whatever happens is the gift that the earth brings, light and harmony, is shared by all other matter. So imagine all that matter of the galaxies, the Milky Way that are there in thousands and thousands, all that is matter in this universe. They get their feeding, they get the divinity, they get the light and the harmony and the consciousness from this tiny, particle, tiny atomic particle called the atom, called the earth. And because of this uniqueness of the earth, that the divine avatar comes only upon earth. He doesn't descend on Jupiter and Mars and moon. Earth, although it's the smallest thing, it has that divinity within. And again we have that human thing about the psychic being, which is there to connect with all the planets. So this is the uniqueness, and it is because of this that the soul reincarnates, comes back again and again, because this is the place of the divine touch. In spite of all its darkness, all its suffering, all its pain, all its ignorance, all its falsehood, because this is the only point of evolution. There is no other planet upon earth where evolution takes place. So this is the evolution of this universe. So if avatars come, if the divinity comes, it's from here the radiation goes to all the other planets. So imagine a descent of an avatar is not just only for the sake of the earth, but whenever he comes here or she comes here, the whole universe gets its plenitude. It's a sort of joyful thing. And it's no doubt now we understand why whenever we see in our Mahabharata TV shows or anywhere, when there's a divine child born, we see all the gods and goddesses in the heavens and Indraloka and all that showering blessings, showering flowers. Because they are happy that upon earth the divine has incarnated a human body. And the second reason why earth is so very important is again very beautiful. Earth itself means matter. And then we have, Mother would say, imagine a circle. I can tell you the imagination of Sri Ramakrishna ashrams, the snake image. I don't know if you've seen that, if you remember. You see, into the snake's mouth, the tail goes in. I don't know if this is the symbolism that Ramakrishna Mission gives it. But what the Mother has given us suits it very perfectly. That the earth, the circle, the mouth is supposedly, imagine that to be the divine. And the tail is matter. So you see, we can go from the head of the serpent and we can take a full circle and come back to tail. So the divine descent, influence of the divine can go from level to level in the circle and come to the tail last. But if the tail is the earth, tail is matter, and then that matter is closest to the divine, to the mouth of the snake. So what is important? That if the snake or the divinity touches this earth directly, then this whole circle gets influenced. It gets transformed. So matter is not something that's to be neglected and rejected and so it's a stupid thing, tamasic thing. No. Now this is the secret of Mother and Sri Aurobindo's yoga. Why are they insisting on the transformation of matter? Not asking us to be great yogis and great pandits and great intellects and great architects. All that you do, Baba, is fine. But those who work on the physical, they are the best recipients of the divinity of the supermind. Because the supermind transforming the body directly is the best thing that can happen. Because matter once transformed remains something eternal. Mind transformed, temporary. We have had great books, great artists, great players and musicians and sculptors and everything. Their influence is very local, very temporary. But if something of the matter changes, say we have got a G5 or something, whatever you call, The whole world is filled up with the G5, a new material thing that has come upon. And then Mother would say, matter alone understands the divine the best, if it experiences. Because any imprint on matter stays permanently. Imprint on thought, imprint on heart, it is volatile. This is the genesis, the emphasis of Sri Aurobindo's tremendous emphasis saying importance of matter. Matter has got the entire divinity within it, and if the supermind can be brought in directly to matter, then the whole work is done and then left to the future. And now you know the secret of why Sri Aurobindo and the Mother left their body. They left their body, it's not that they died. They left their body because they brought the supermind direct into matter. Then they said, now, let humanity and let earth work it out itself. 100 years, 1,000 years, doesn't matter. But they have made a direct link between supermind and matter. That was the purpose of his body being, getting that the supramental light. And the Mother, of course, she went further to bring down the supramental consciousness and transform her own body to a great extent into a supramental body. All remember body, physically body. And once it comes into one body, it is contagious. Because matter is one. Mind is not one, heart is not one, emotions are not one. The only thing upon earth that is one is the supreme and matter. Incredible. So if matter can be touched by the divine, that becomes contagious, so the whole humanity will become divinity. So you don't need new religions, new pujas, no nothing of this sort. We have to work on matter, on the physical, on the life, on our bodies. So bring the divinity into the body. Well, it is not for you and for me, I know, understand, it is difficult. But this is the essence of Sri Aurobindo's philosophy. And that is why I've been telling you since yesterday that Sri Aurobindo has talked to us about the next future. Till now, nobody gave such importance to matter. But for the first time, matter understands best. Once matter is transformed, the world transformation is easy. Otherwise, people and yogis and saints have come and given us all mantras and all stotras and all these things, all mental thing. But for the first time, Sri Aurobindo has impacted matter. And that is the secret of his body, and that is how the secret of the Mother. And well, this itself will take a long time to describe. We may have another 8 talks, if you want to, on the transformation of matter, or what the work the Mother has done. It's difficult for you to understand, but this is where we lived with. When the Mother was working in the transformation of her body, she used to send notes in the bulletin, and we used to see her transformation happening. And sometimes we used to hear her from her room, and we used to be downstairs near the Samadhi, we could hear her. So we have passed through the stages when the Mother was actually in the work of transforming. Well, those of you who are interested can read further in the agenda and see how much of the transformation she has done, the golden body that she has brought in, left for the future. And material thing that gets transformed becomes a module. Remember the word, a module for the new race. Somebody asked me the question, what about the new physical being? When the Superman comes, there won't be a body. There will be a body. And that new body of the supramental has been worked out almost to the end by the Mother. And she says, I've left this body in the subtle physical, and you people can see it, those who have the eyes to see. Well, that's a very fascinating subject. You'll forget your time. At least I forget my time, but I don't want to take too much of your time. Well, I'm sorry to you to have exceeded today, but something of the Mother and Master is beyond me. It gives me too much energy and it's difficult for me to stop. Well, thanks again for being together. Lovely. It's been beautiful.